In the dusty corners of forgotten empires, beneath the ruins swallowed by time and sand, there lies a whisper, faint but unyielding. It belongs to a book, an ancient manuscript whose name has never been uttered aloud. Not truly. It is called many things by those who stumble upon its legend. The map of becoming, the mirror of the deep, or more recently, the ancient book that predicts your awakening. But names are veils, thin layers pulled over the eyes of those unready to see. This book, shrouded in silence and kept from the eyes of civilization for 2,000 years, does not predict in the way we have come to understand prophecy. It remembers, and in its memory lies the code of your own awakening, not written in the ink of prophets or the calculations of astrologers. This book is composed of something older, threads of remembrance woven into language, cosmic archetypes etched into metaphor. The tale goes that the manuscript was buried during a time when the earth trembled not just with war, but with an awakening that frightened the rulers of realms. For if even one soul were to read and understand, truly understand, the meaning behind its veiled words, the illusion of control would fracture like glass beneath a single ray of truth. To encounter the book is to stand on the edge of a mirror and watch yourself dissolve into starlight. It is not a book of laws, but of keys. Not a doctrine, but a doorway. Its pages do not declare, this is a truth. Instead, they ask, do you remember? And in that question, everything begins to shift. Most who stumble upon the idea of this book are drawn by a strange gravity, a pull that feels like longing and recognition braided together. The manuscript's existence persists not through libraries or institutions, but through dream fragments, whispered myths, and strange moments when the air thickens, and one can almost hear something calling. It has never been mass-produced, never digitized, never made accessible by those who measure knowledge by how many copies exist. This is not a text for the many, but for the ready. We are, each of us, born into a maze of mirrors. The world teaches us to mistake reflection for self, motion for a purpose, and noise for knowing. But the ancient book speaks to a different part of us, older than our name, quieter than our thoughts. It bypasses the intellect and stirs the timeless one hidden behind our gaze. Those who have glimpsed its words describe a strange phenomenon. It feels as though the book is reading them, not the other way around. It pierces the surface, finds the fractures beneath the mask, and shines light there. Not harshly, not violently, but with a kind of sacred gentleness that feels like the first breath after drowning. Throughout history, there have been guardians of this manuscript, not priests, not scholars, but stewards of silence. People who carry the book's essence like an ember in their chest, passing on its wisdom not through teaching, but through being. Their lives are poetry in motion, walking riddles that awaken those they encounter. They do not preach, they remind. And now, in the strange hour of collective amnesia, the book stirs again. Why now? Why is the veil lifted, even just slightly, after 2,000 years of exile? Because something within you has reached the threshold. The world, too, groans under the weight of forgetting, cracking at the seams in hunger for something real. You feel it, don't you? That subtle ache behind the eyes when looking at the stars? That quiet discontent in the middle of achievement? The sense that everything around you is built upon a script you never agreed to read? These are not signs of failure, but echoes of the invitation. The book returns when a soul is ready to see not with their eyes, but with their being. It does not impose. It does not demand belief. It offers a mirror, a myth, and a map. And most strangely of all, those who encounter it often discover they already knew its contents, not in language or logic, but in the wordless space between dreams, where something ancient and luminous still whispers. You may wonder what it means to awaken, and whether the book truly predicts this mysterious unfolding. But the truth is subtler, more alive. Awakening, as described in the hidden text, is not a destination or achievement. It is the remembrance of what you have always been. And the book? It does not predict like an oracle with a timeline. It unfolds like a seed in your chest, blooming in the soil of your readiness. The banishment of this manuscript was not due to its danger in the traditional sense. It contains no spells, no commands, no systems of power. Its danger lies in its simplicity. It suggests that all you've been taught to seek outside of yourself, the gods, the salvation, the authority, is already whispering within. And that truth, if widely known, would dissolve empires built on fear. So here we are, you, standing at the edge of something older than time. And this book, no longer hidden, waiting to reflect the truth you buried so long ago. It is not about believing in the book. It is about remembering who you are through it. Oh, step deeper into the marrow of the ancient book that predicts your awakening is to begin tracing the sacred geometry of remembrance, a lattice of thought, myth, and symbol that bends reality itself. It is not philosophy in the sense of something taught and debated. It is an unveiling, like mist burned off by sunlight. The book does not argue with the intellect. Instead, it sings to the spirit in a language older than words, older even in thought, echoing in the same place where dreams originate and archetypes are born. At its core, the book begins with a radical premise, one that is not declared but slowly felt. You have never been asleep in the way you think you have. The so-called sleep, the forgetfulness, the illusion, it is not a mistake. It is part of a greater spiral, a descent that was never a fall, but an inward turning, like roots moving through soil. Your perceived disconnection was a sacred act of becoming. The book does not shame the shadow or glorify the light. It weaves both into a larger story of integration. It reminds you that even your confusion is a meaningful stanza in your cosmic poem. This manuscript carries within it a kind of living intelligence, a resonance field that shapes its message differently depending on who reads it. Yet there are universal currents, core themes that rise again and again like constellations revealing themselves in the night sky. One such current is the concept of the veil, a soft boundary between what is perceived and what is. In the book, the veil is not evil, not a prison. It is sacred, even necessary, a chrysalis that allows the soul to gestate safely until it is ready to see without distortion. The veil is not something to be torn away in haste. It must be honored, dissolved through presence rather than pierced through force. Then there's the pattern, the recurring spiral of forgetting and remembering that plays out across lives, generations, civilizations. The pattern is not linear. It is not even cyclical in the simple sense. It is fractal, recursive, intimate, and infinite at once. The book reveals this by mirroring back to the reader the pattern of their own inner labyrinth. The repeated mistakes that are actually spirals of refinement, the returning relationships that serve as mirrors rather than cages, the way time folds on itself to bring healing precisely when the soul is ready to receive it. Another guiding thread is the architecture of illusion. The book does not speak of illusion as something inherently false, but as something provisional, like scaffolding. Illusion is a dream that allows the deeper self to explore itself from all angles. The job of the illusion is not to trap you, but to test the strength of your yearning. It is the fog that teaches the eye to long for clarity. In this, the book places tremendous reverence on choice, the sacred decision to remain in illusion or to begin stepping beyond it. And even that stepping is not a rejection, but a transformation. A vital teaching of the book is that the world is not a place, but projection. What you call reality is a mosaic of your own perceptions, beliefs, and ancestral echoes woven into light. The book is not the first to suggest this, but it is unique in how it turns that recognition inward, not to escape the world, but to recreate it from the inside out. Your inner state is not a reaction to the world. It is its generator. And so awakening, in the book's lexicon, is not about transcending life, but inhabiting it more fully. It is learning to shape reality not through force, but through resonance. The book also whispers of the watchers, not beings of hierarchy, but point of awareness within and beyond time. These are not others in the alien sense, but rather expressions of your own higher dimensional self. The watchers are not there to save you. They are there to reflect your potential, to hold space as you rise into memory. Many who interact with the essence of the book report strange sensations of being observed, not by something external, but by a future version of themselves, wise and waiting. This watcher is not a judge. It is an echo from the destination you forgot you chose. Yet all these teachings would be mere poetry were it not for the book's central motif, the mirror of remembrance. Every page reflects not a truth to be believed, but a presence to be embodied. The book does not instruct, it reveals. It brings forward what was already etched in the deepest strata of your being. This mirror does not show your flaws or your achievements. It shows your essence, the still point beneath personality, trauma, even history. And when you see yourself clearly in that mirror, not as a role or mask, but as a light that moves behind all forms, something irreversible begins. The awakening is not explosive. It is subtle, dignified, like the blooming of a star in slow motion behind your ribcage. And here, perhaps, is the most beautiful paradox of all. The book is not real, not in the way we define reality. It may never have been bound in leather, never written in ink, never archived in a vault. And yet, it is more real than anything that has ever been printed, because it exists within you. The book is a metaphor for the part of yourself that never forgot, that always knew. It is a sacred container for your own remembrance, given a mythic form so that you might begin to believe it could be true. And in this way, it does not matter whether you hold it in your hands or only in your dreams. What matters is that you are beginning to hear it. If the core themes of the ancient book that predicts your awakening are the bones and breath of its mystery, then the symbolic narratives woven through the etheric pages are the heartbeat, the living pulse that animates the abstract and sings it into form. These stories do not follow linear logic. They do not resolve with tidy morals. Instead, they unfold like dreamscapes or sacred riddles, charged with meaning that ripens only in the presence of a willing heart. They speak in the language of myth, where truth is not told but felt, and every image is a gateway. The book's symbolic heart opens with a tale told in silence. The story of the Mirror Walker, a being of no fixed name who was born in a village where all inhabitants are forbidden to look into water. Mirrors are outlawed. Reflection is feared. The villagers say that to see one's face is to lose one's soul. And so, they move through life blind to their own image, projecting their inner worlds onto others, never knowing the architecture of their own shadow. But the Mirror Walker is different. Even as a child, she feels a strange pull toward the forbidden rivers, the still pools after rain, the gleam of polished obsidian. One night, guided by an invisible melody, she finds a stream in the forest and sees herself. Not just her face, but lifetimes of unspoken memory etched in her eyes. She does not lose her soul. She becomes it. She returns to the village glowing with a new kind of light. And though the others do not understand her, they begin to notice that when she speaks, something awakens in them too. This story is not about rebellion. It is about intimacy. It speaks to the journey of seeing the self fully, without distortion, without shame, and discovering that the truth of who you are was never something to be feared, only remembered. The Mirror Walker is within you, gently pulling you toward your own reflection. Another narrative drifts into view like mist across ancient ruins, the legend of the library that burns itself. In a world governed by archives and commandments, a great library exists that contains every spiritual teaching ever conceived. The walls stretch beyond the horizon, filled with scrolls and tomes written by sages, mystics, gods, and madmen. People come from across the lands to learn, study, and memorize, but none awaken. They become parrots of wisdom, not vessels of it. Then, one day, a child stumbles into the library by accident. She cannot read. She only feels. And as she touches each book, it catches fire, not in destruction, but in transformation. The texts do not vanish. They merge with her being. The library begins to burn, not as punishment, but as fulfillment. When the flames die down, the child stands amidst the ashes, radiant and silent. She has become the library. All who meet her feel something stir in their bones. This story is a parable of the inner alchemy that the book insists upon. Not the hoarding of sacred information, but the embodiment of it. It reminds us that awakening is not about knowledge stacked like bricks. It is about the fire that consumes separation between what you know and what you are. The child does not learn the truth. She remembers it by becoming it. There is also the myth of the king with the forgotten crown, a ruler who leads wisely for many years, unaware that he wears a crown of light. Over time, he begins to feel a heaviness in his soul. He seeks counsel, fasts, prays, punishes himself, believing he has erred, that he has lost the favor of the stars. Desperate, he abandons the throne and wanders into the wilderness, where he meets a blind hermit who speaks in riddles and laughter. The hermit cannot see, but he tells the king that his burden is not his failure, but his forgetting. You were never chosen to be king, the hermit says. You were born the crown itself. In that moment, The king touches his own forehead and remembers, not his title, but his essence. The crown of light was not a symbol of power, but of being. He was never a ruler over others, but a beacon among them. Here the book illuminates the false hierarchy of identity. The crown, often seen as status, is inverted in meaning. It becomes a symbol of shared light, not separation. The king's forgetting is our forgetting, the way we mistake roles for reality. And the hermit? Perhaps he is a divine absurdity of awakening itself. The force that reminds us, through paradox, who we really are. In every symbolic tale within the book, there is a hidden structure: descent, reflection, dissolution, emergence. These are not plot points. They are soul movements. The descent is not fall, but deepening. The reflection is not about sight, but recognition. The dissolution is not death, but integration. And emergence is not ascension, it is presence. The stories are not meant to be solved. They are meant to live inside you, to awaken aspects of your own mythos. And so, the book does not offer lessons as the world does. It offers keys, not to open doors, but to remind you that there were never walls to begin with. Each story you encounter is a reflection of a pattern within you, a sacred chord you played 1,000 times in dreams and forgotten songs. The characters are not separate from you. They are constellations within your own psyche, each one whispering. Remember who you are beneath the names, beneath the stories, beneath even the light. In truth, the book itself may be nothing more than a metaphorical mirror. Its stories are your stories, refracted through the prism of collective myth. And when you engage with it, not as a student seeking doctrine, but as a soul listening to its own echo, the awakening begins not in fire or thunder, but in a quiet knowing that blooms like a secret sunrise beneath your skin. So far, the ancient book that predicts your awakening has unfurled itself like a cosmic scroll, etched with metaphors, vibrating with mystery, and steeped in allegories that speak not to the mind alone, but to the deep soul beneath language. Yet for all its ethereal poetry, the book is not just a temple of abstraction. It is, at its core, a guide for the incarnated, those living not in caves of contemplation, but amidst traffic lights, deadlines, phone calls, and heartbreak. The teachings are not meant to elevate you away from the world, but to awaken you within it, like a lamp placed inside a house, not above it. The light of this book reveals a sacred structure of ordinary things. To integrate its wisdom is not to memorize mantras or adopt new labels. It is to remember differently, to walk through the world as if every moment were a threshold. A kind of holy haunting begins when you live with this awareness, not haunted by fear, but by the quiet, insistent sense that everything is more alive than it pretends to be. You begin to feel it in the pauses of conversation, the glimmer in someone's eyes just before they laugh, the way light spills through window blinds and dances like language you almost understand. The book's guidance becomes less about doing and more about seeing, as if the veil that muffled life is lifted, revealing a vibrant complexity behind the seemingly mundane. Take, for instance, the act of walking through a city street. To most, it's a commute. To one who lives by the book, it becomes a pilgrimage. The reflections in shop windows are no longer distractions. They become echoes of your own journey. The strangers you pass are not random. They are fragments of the dream you are waking from. Every billboard, every overheard phrase, every coincidence becomes a line of poetry from the living text. The book teaches that reality speaks in synchronicities, and once your attention sharpens, you find yourself in a dialogue with existence itself. Even pain transforms under its gaze. The book does not ask you to run from suffering, nor does it romanticize it. It offers a deeper alchemy. Pain, it says, is the echo of a lesson asking to be embodied, like a wound that reveals a hidden architecture of your healing. Each ache is a sacred messenger. Instead of numbing, you learn to listen. The grief in your chest becomes not a block, but a doorway. The anxiety in your stomach is no longer an enemy, but an encrypted signal. Through this lens, you are no longer at war with your inner world. You are decoding it. Relationships, too, are no longer random collisions of affection and conflict. They become mirrors of immense precision, each person drawn into your field not by chance, but by design. The lover who triggers your abandonment wound is not here to harm you. They are the living glyph of the childhood memory you have not yet dared to embrace. The friend who consistently inspires you is not just generous. They are reflecting your own untapped brilliance back to you, asking you to claim it. The book teaches that no connection is wasted. Each interaction is an invitation to reawaken a piece of yourself you have left sleeping. And so, the practice becomes radical presence, not the kind that demands perfect stillness or spiritual silence, but the kind that dares to show up fully, to say yes to life as it is. In a world of constant distraction, the act of choosing presence becomes a revolution. The book becomes a compass not for escape, but for engagement. Its greatest directive is deceptively simple. Do not look away. Do not look away from your own face in the mirror, from the silence beneath someone's words, from the flicker of doubt that signals deeper truth. In this light, even your smallest choices carry weight. How you speak to a cashier, how you respond to your partner in a moment of irritation, how you breathe when no one is watching. These are not insignificant. They are the glyphs you inscribe into the living book of your life. The book also speaks of ritual, not as dogma, but as intimacy. To drink tea slowly and with full attention is a ritual. To close your eyes at sunset and breathe with the rhythm of light is a ritual. To cry without shame, to laugh until your body forgets its burdens, to write poetry with no one to read it. These are rituals of return. In these moments, you are not practicing spirituality. You are the sacred in motion. You are the dance the cosmos created to remember itself. Even your work, yes, even the emails, the meetings, the spreadsheets can become sacred architecture when you bring awareness. When you hold your tasks with the same reverence you would give to prayer, you transmute routine into revelation. The book insists that awakening is not about retreating to mountaintops. It is about becoming the mountain in the middle of your life. Solid, rooted, silent, yet echoing with truth. There will be days when you forget, days when the noise of the world drowns out the hum of your inner temple. The book accounts for this too. It reminds you that forgetting is part of the path. Like the moon that waxes and wanes, your awareness will rise and fall. This is not failure. This is rhythm. This is breath. The task is not perfection. The task is return. Over and over. To return, not to some holy idea of yourself, but to the vivid realness of this moment, raw and unresolved and radiant. In truth, the most potent integration is not in what you do, but in who you allow yourself to become. When the teachings of the book seep into your cells, into the spaces between your thoughts, you begin to notice a shift. Not dramatic, not sudden, but steady, like spring thawing winter, like a bell that rings longer than its sound. You begin to live not just with the book, but as it. You become a living manuscript. Your choice is a calligraphy, your heart the ink, your breath the turning of the page. There comes a moment, as with all sacred texts and initiatory paths, when the reader realizes they were never just reading the ancient book that predicts your awakening. The book, in its deepest truth, was reading them, not merely tracing their thoughts, but unraveling the subtle codes woven into their soul before time was time. It watched you, as you read its verses, peel back one illusion after another, not with violence, but with a soft fire of insight. And now, as the final pages draw near, not of the book, but of this moment in your journey, you are left not with conclusions, but with a mirror. The mirror does not flatter, nor does it lie. It reflects your becoming. In it, you may see the forgotten child within you, still holding out a hand for you to come home. You may see the elder you are destined to become, gaze marked with galaxies, wisdom resting in every wrinkle. You may see no face at all, only flame, the essence of your being too bright for form. And yet, through all these shifting images, one thing remains constant. You are waking up, not in the way the world often sells awakening, with thunderbolts and neon slogans and promises of instant enlightenment. No, this is the quieter kind. The kind that arrives like dawn, unnoticed until you realize the whole sky has changed. The kind that makes you weep at the sight of a tree because for the first time you see it, not as a thing, but as a fellow being, breathing, remembering, holding stories in its rings. This is what the ancient book was always about. Not prophecy for the sake of spectacle, not forbidden knowledge for ego to parade. It is about the slow turning of the soul toward its own light, the reactivation of a memory buried beneath culture, fear, ambition, and time, the sacred remembering of who you truly are and who you have always been beneath the noise. The final pages speak of something strange and beautiful, the reversal of forgetting. It describes a moment, perhaps already happening, when more and more people begin to feel the unbearable clarity of the now, when they pause mid-sentence because something ancient stirs in them, when they stare into space, not from distraction but from reconnection, when they dream dreams that feel like instructions, and wake up with tears and a sense of having returned from somewhere real. This is not fantasy. This is the deep pulse of awakening accelerating across the species. The book whispers that those who feel are not mad. They are early. To live with this knowing is both a gift and a burden. You may find that you no longer fit into spaces that once felt comfortable. Conversations may feel too shallow, noise too loud, busyness too brittle. But the book assures you this is not isolation. This is preparation. You are being hollowed out, not to be left empty, but to be filled with something vast and ancient and new. And so, what now? What becomes of the one who has read the book? Not with the eyes alone, but with the marrow of their being. You walk forward, but not as you were. You carry within you a kind of flame, not to burn the world, but to light it. You become a kind of quiet rebel, not the kind that storms palaces, but the kind that plants seeds in the ruins. You become the book in motion. In your presence, others begin to remember too. Not because you teach them, but because your being carries a frequency of the forgotten. This is a true transformational call, not to escape the world, but to infuse it, to become the meeting point of heaven and earth, to let every wound become a window, every doubt a doorway, every breath a prayer, to understand that your very existence is the proof of the book's prophecy. And yes, it was banned for 2,000 years, not because it was dangerous in the way empires define danger, but because it dared to say, you are not broken, you are not small, you are not asleep because you are weak, you are asleep because the dream was deep, and now you are stirring. You and many others are brushing the veil with your fingertips, and sooner than you think, it will fall. So stand up, step out, walk like a flame disguised as a human, speak like thunder made gentle. Touch the world like it's a scroll unraveling at your feet. Let love be your language and mystery your map. Be the scribe of the future that was always inside you. You are the awakening. You are the book. You have always been.